Good evening and welcome to Decision Point. I'm Ben Swan. I'll be with you for the next half hour as we continue a conversation that we began a few weeks ago. We're talking with Holocaust survivors and hearing their incredible stories of how they survived one of the darkest periods in world history. Joining me this evening is Henry Kellen, who is a Holocaust survivor. Sir, thank you so much for being with us. And his son Shaul is with us as well. Shaul, thank you for being here. Henry, your story is amazing, and there's so much to cover in the next half hour. So I want to begin. You were born, you said, in Poland.
I was born in Lodz, Poland in 1915, and consequently I'm 95 years old, and just a few days ago the Holocaust Museum, which I'm the founder, was celebrated a big way my birthday.
Your 95th birthday, celebrated at the Holocaust Museum here. And
yes.
For people who don't know, a lot of people know or have heard of the Holocaust Museum here. If you have not been to see it, you need to be there. But you are the founder of that Holocaust Museum. You were the one who brought it here to El Paso. Why did you feel that it was important to bring that museum here?
Well, there were mainly two reasons why I felt like establish a museum in our community. Number one is more or less in 1980, a very mean phenomena was happening all over the country. From nowhere, lots of deniers came to the surface. Many books were printed by prominent professors. Even a television station, Channel 5, which was not far from you, just across the street, had a monthly program, a weekly program, every Sunday afternoon, denying the Holocaust. And I felt that if we would be silent, eventually the survivors, if the survivors wouldn't do anything, the deniers would take it over, and this is one of the reasons why I felt that we got to have some kind of a memorial establishment here. Number two, I was very lucky to come to the United States in 1946, and this is thanks to President Truman, who did issue 500 visas to come to the United States, and among the 500 were 500 Holocaust survivors who were Jewish, and the other 500 were Gentiles, because there were many inmates of different concentration camps who were not Jewish, and it had from different nationalities. I felt that we got to have a museum here because 6 million Jewish people were murdered, among them 1.5 million Jewish children, and at the same time 5 million Christians, because Hitler was as much anti-Christian as he was anti-Jewish. So this is the main reason why I felt that a museum in a small scale has to be established here. The first museum which was I started was the Jewish Federation in one small room with basically naked wall. I got a small little showcase, empty showcase, and the only memorabilia I was able to put in were books dealing with the Holocaust. But with the time, I was getting quite many posters, and in spite of the fact that the museum was only one room establishment, we had a lot of visitors coming as American soldiers, students from UTEP, and most of the visitors were sitting on the floor. And this is the way the Holocaust Museum
began here.
begins.
Let me ask you this: for the people who were coming to see it when it was first established here, were they surprised by what they were seeing and what they were learning? Do you find that most people are pretty, not in a negative way, but pretty ignorant of the realities of the Holocaust?
I would say so. I would say so. Naturally, students from high schools and middle schools, they didn't have the slightest idea what did happen only a few years ago. And they did learn a whole lot. For the last 25 years, I did spend most of the time lecturing about the Holocaust. Not only in local schools, but in Silver City, in Las Cruces, in Douglas, Arizona. And I've been getting a lot of letters. And almost all the letters are saying, what I did learn from you, it saved my life, changed my life. And this is very important because young people of America who basically don't know too much about history, they by no means could realize that in modern times, basically a slaughterhouse took place because I never went back to Lithuania for one simple reason. I feel that the land is soaked with blood. And what I am concerned, being 95 years old, it's true that the Holocaust do happen almost every day, but not in such a scale. So the Holocaust, which I feel that it is not even the proper name, because if I would have anything to say, I would call the Holocaust
A slaughterhouse.
the genocide.
Genocide. Let me ask you this. You said in 1980, one of the reasons you felt compelled to push for that museum was because there was a movement of denial for the Holocaust.
Yes.
But today, it's 2010, and we're seeing that a lot
Well,
today. It's
yes.
still with us. It's
Yes.
still here.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, the deniers are coming back, and maybe there's some different reasons. It has a lot of connections with events which are happening now in the state of Israel, but I feel that anti-Semitism now is worse than ever.
It's worse than ever.
Yes. Nothing to compare Nazi when the Nazis were in power, but ever since for the last 65 years, now it is really bad again. But the 13 Holocaust museums in the United States, our museum here is very busy. We got almost every single day schools coming, and we do the best, to fight the deniers. However, like you said, they are very strong again, and this is the only tool we have, is teaching our visitors what did happen. Because what did happen basically in Nazi Germany, I was frequently in Germany because my grandparents were living in East Prussia, and I don't think that the German people were not anti-Semitic at all. But
You do not think the German people were anti-Semitic?
no, absolutely not.
Okay.
The Polish were, and maybe the Romanians, and
You said that the Polish were anti-Semitic, and you were born in Poland.
Yes. Well, like Saul mentioned before, why the Polish people were anti-Semitic for two reasons. First, because the church constantly, every Sunday, basically was poisoning people with dislike the Jews, because going back to the history, which is a big lie, that the Jews were accused of killing Jesus Christ.
So the predominant theology in Poland was that Jews were bad because they killed Christ.
That's Christ. And number two,
which of course they did in the Romans.
Yes, and basically, as we do know, the Roman were the one. However,
right. But that wasn't what was being taught.
Yes.
Okay.
Number two, the economy, because my hometown, altogether, Poland for the war, had 30 million people. Out of the 10% were Jewish.
Okay.
In other words, after the Inquisition from 1490, most of the Jews from Spain did move to east, to Poland. Therefore, the population with the time got really big. I would say that as much as I could remember, and I know that out of the 3 million Jews who were in Poland, 10% were well-to-do, 40% I consider as being a middle class, and the rest were poor, very, very poor. But in Poland, being Jewish, you couldn't get a job with anything which was controlled by the government. You couldn't be a mailman, you couldn't be a policeman, you couldn't be a fireman, you couldn't even go to college. To take up medicine in universities was absolutely impossible. So the saying was in Poland that I would say in Polish, but some people maybe understand. It says that kamienice wasze, a ulice nasze. What it means, the houses are yours and the streets are ours, because the average Polish worker, after he got paid Friday night, he wouldn't come home. He would go to a bar, and he didn't care for the children or his wife, if there was any food. And the Jewish men had a responsibility for about his family, and consequently would get home. They would eat whatever they could afford, but Jewish children were wearing shoes, as Polish children did not.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute, because and Shoal, let me bring you in also to this conversation, because you made this point before we started here, and I think it's a very interesting point, and historically, and I think it's interesting. You all speak very carefully, and I respect that. But help me to understand, because at the time you were talking about in multiple countries that Jews were disliked because of I'm trying to remember how you put it, but you said the way they conducted their lives or something to that effect. Explain that.
80% of the Jewish population in the world was what is called the Pale of Settlement. In other words, it's Poland, at that time, Poland, Lithuania, Ukraine, Estonia, basically in that area. 80% of all the Jews in the world were from there. Historically, it can be shown. David Katz has a great book. It's called Lithuanian Jewish Culture, and it is put out by the Center for Stateless Cultures. The Center for Stateless Cultures in Lithuania. He's an American, but he lives in Lithuania. He teaches there. So just think about the concept stateless cultures. So Jews were always a stateless culture. So historically, they got into that area, and they made up 80% of the population. And
but they lived differently. The way they lived was different than you were saying the general population, and there was resentment that was built because of that.
well, you know, the resentment is historically very long. In other words, it's not. It did not originate there.
Right.
It originated. I mean, think about it. You know, the Jews gave the world the Sabbath. They gave the Ten Commandments. The Jews. I don't know how to define it. You know.
Sure. But that it came from the culture.
It came through that channel.
Right. Right.
And then Christianity arose out of Judaism, and Islam arose out of Judaism. And the Jews lived differently, and they were very stubborn. I mean, they would rather die than change their ways, you see? And that is, on the one hand, it can make you, it can make you be awful, in other words, full of awe, but it can make you be awful. You gotta get rid of that guy,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So
You
that
can be
tension,
or- yeah.
right, awful in both senses,
Yeah.
you know? So that tension is present throughout history.
Well, you did, and Henry, you're describing something here, and Shoal, you did it as well. That in Poland, Lithuania, that you would have, you know, the man who would receive a paycheck, he would get his money for the week, and he would go out and spend it on drink or, you know, spend the money however, waste it, and go home. And you think you were saying his children had no shoes, but the Jew would go home and bring shoes to his children and save some of that money. And you described there was a gap that was forming between the Jewish communities and those other communities, a economic gap, moral gap, whatever, however you want to describe it. But there was a gap forming, and as it did, resentment is built.
Well, resentment has to have space. You know, if you don't give resentment any space, it won't be. So, sure, the resentment will grow within that gap.
So as 80%, Henry, of the Jews in the world are in this, how did you describe the region?
It's called the Pale of Settlement.
Pale of Settlement.
That's the historical term.
So within this area, a lot of people, when they look back on the history or even just kind of glance over it, they immediately think that the Holocaust is all related to the Nazis and only to Germany. But in these other countries, I think you said there were 8,000 camps
8,000,
throughout
yes.
Eastern Europe?
Yes. Well, not in Eastern Europe, all over Europe.
All of Europe.
Yeah.
But this is during the Nazi era.
Right.
Right.
However, most of the extermination took place in Eastern Europe. I keep on thinking very often that while in the very first beginning, when the war started between Germany and Russia, the German army was very successful, and it started all in June. And as we probably know that we all probably do know that while Poland and France and even Yugoslavia were overrun by the German army in a matter of 3-4 months, the whole of the year, while the German army were almost 2,500 miles away from Berlin, the German army was not getting enough supplies in ammunition and even uniform. Why? Because the German railroad was busy, you know, transporting Jews to Poland, Greek Jews to Treblinka, Jews from different countries to Auschwitz. Consequently, the extermination of the Jews was for the party more important than supply, you know,
For the troops.
for the troops. And this is something which you must understand, that there was always a big conflict between the German army and the parties, between the SA and SS, who were sitting home enjoying beautiful villas which were taken away from people who were sent to concentration camp, and the army who was fighting and bleeding. So in the meantime, the priority of the party was extermination of the Jewish communities in every place.
So you're saying that the priorities were very different then for the leadership. They were so obsessed with the extermination of the Jews that they did it at their own peril.
Absolutely.
At the expense of their own
Absolutely.
army.
Absolutely.
Fascinating. Tell me, how much time do we have here in this segment, guys? Because I want to get into your story, a few minutes, okay. As we move, but I don't want to get cut off midway through. We're going to have more of this next week as well, this additional half hour to tell your story. But I want you to talk a little bit about what you want people today to know, because there aren't many of you left.
Yes. Well, like I did mention before, I'm not getting all the credit for establishing the museum because I started. However, we had many good people who naturally worked with me. But first I had a small museum, then we moved to another building, which was a whole lot bigger, and we were there almost 10 years. The building on Wallenberg burned down. Then we had the 7 years of trying to get another one. But I never stopped talking. I never talk and talk and talk. And like the reason why I did talk is not so much concentrating on the event of the Holocaust, but since I am a survivor, I felt we must give credit to people who saved our lives. So basically, as we probably do know that we have today, I would say the very first beginning after the war, out of 6 million Jews in Europe, maybe less than 500,000. How did we survive? Well, most of the survivors were saved by the Allied army, who liberated camps. The second categories were underground. In many, many camps, including my own, many young people were escaping from camps and fighting the German authorities from the forest. Half of them survived, half did not. Basically, they were successful because as good as the German army, as good as the German soldiers were very brave, they were afraid to go to the forest because they knew that they are going to be killed. The third category is people who were hiding us. And this is, I'm among them, and consequently, I do talk about them all the time, and this is what I'm going to let you know today, the details, because these people cannot be forgotten. We call them the righteous among the Gentiles, and this is the main reason why I'm very appreciate very much to be invited, because I want to talk about these people.
You said that you call them the righteous among the Gentiles.
Among the nations.
Of the nations.
The nations, yes.
Among the nations. And these are the people who hid.
They are the people who are risking their own life to save Jewish life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And those people were all throughout.
And they were all over Europe, including Germany.
Mm-hmm. Including in Poland.
In Poland.
Oh, yeah, well, not all over Europe, including Germany, because Germany was not easy.
And they hid these people.
You must understand that basically why the party of Nazi Germany having 8,000 camps, if it wouldn't be collaboration in the local community, in the local countries, they would have never been successful, because unfortunately there was collaboration all over. People, regardless in Poland, Lithuania, even France, that went to college, they were collaborating with the Nazis because More or less, until the end of 1943, it looks like Germany is going to win the war. When I collaborated, they thought after the war we over, they will have high positions.
So they worked with the Nazis.
Yes.
And you were saying without that collaboration, I mean, you cannot possibly have these 8,000 camps all over Europe.
Absolutely.
And but it's too much.
I mean, think about how long it takes to kill by bullet, or putting in the oven, person by person. How long it will take to kill 100,000 people. Time-wise, just time-wise. You know, the person has to rest or whatever, you know, just, it's impossible.
Well, and I know it's a very different scenario, but even what we see, the mass executions that are going on in Juarez right now, it took them 2.5 years to kill 5,000 people. And obviously it's a different scenario, but what you're saying is that it is an incredibly extensive, expansive operation to exterminate 6 million people.
The pits were prepared in advance. You see, when the Germans had a special unit, the killing squads, when they would arrive, the pits were prepared. All you had to do is round up the Jews in that particular community, take them to the pit, and boom, 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 and
who prepared the pits?
Usually the Jews. But, you know, there's a very great book. There's a very great researcher who is a father in France. His name is Father Dubois. And he went to Ukraine. And it's called The Holocaust by Bullets. Absolutely, highly recommended. He's a saint. And he had 12 people with him. One of the persons was a metal detector. And you see, the number of mass graves in the Ukraine is unimaginable. And he tells the story why he started it. It's because of his grandfather, because his grandfather was sent to the Ukraine from France. And they would go with the metal detector over a field, and when the metal detector would make a sound, they know that this is a mass grave because the bullets are there. And they would dig up and found the bullets, and 1.5 million. He found, I think, over 400 graves. And he's been doing this.
He's still doing this, by the way.
The Holocaust. Why do I mention this? Because the villagers, not just the Jews, but the villagers, the people who grew up there, they were forced to dig. They were forced to cooperate with the Germans, and many of them dug the pits. It's an incredible book. It's a must-read for anyone in the modern world.
Good, and we'll have that up on the screen so they can look it up. Gentlemen, we are out of time for this week, so we're going to wrap it up, but we'll be back with more next week, another half-hour show with these gentlemen to hear more about this incredible story. Until then, God bless you. Thank you for tuning in.